Dr. Ranjani Parthasarathy is a professor in the Department of Information Science and Technology, Anna University. Her area of specialization is computer architecture and networks. One of her special interests is Indian language technology systems. She is actively involved in research in all the areas and has over 50 publications to her credit. She has about 25 years of experience covering both industry and academics.
Welcome to the UGC lecture series in computer science. This is a series of lectures on computer architecture. So, we have been looking at some basic operational concepts and trying to understand how instructions work. What we have covered so far are the following. So, as I said, we looked at basic operational concepts and we looked at types of instructions, and we have also looked at some addressing modes. So, what we will look at today will be a little bit more on addressing modes in terms of how to use them, and we will also look at how instructions are handled. Talking about addressing modes, the different ways in which the location of an operand is specified in an instruction is what is referred to as addressing modes. So, we have already seen different addressing modes. A quick recap of those addressing modes now. We have what is called as the immediate addressing mode, which is normally indicated by hash and a value as such. The meaning of this is that the actual value is specified as the operand. So, the operand is equal to the value which is specified in the instruction. Then we have what is called as a register addressing mode, so specified as Ri. So, the effective address here is Ri. So, which means whichever register is specified, the contents are taken from that register. Then we talk about the absolute or direct addressing mode, it is either called direct addressing mode or absolute addressing mode, in which the memory location is specified. So, the effective address is the location that is specified directly in the instruction. We also have something called indirect addressing mode. Now, in indirect we actually have two versions, one called the register indirect and the memory indirect. In register indirect, the contents, the effective address is the contents of the value which is there of the register. So, that is, you take the value which is there in the register and that register value gives the memory address. So, you have to fetch the data from that memory address. So, effective address is contents of the register. When I say indirect memory or memory indirect kind of addressing mode, there again similar to this, only thing is now the value which is specified here is the memory location. So, you have a memory location whose contents will give you the memory location of your actual data. So, the effective address is taken as contents of this location which is specified here. Then we have few other indexing modes, one called the index addressing mode, which is also very commonly used addressing mode. So, here what we do is you specify an index plus a base register from which that index is calculated. So, for instance, if I say x of Ri, then the effective address is calculated as the contents of Ri plus x, that will be the effective address. So, this x serves as an index. Then we have something called base with index. So, here what we do is you can have it can be specified as a combination of two registers. So, where I say that one register will serve as the base and the other register would serve as the index. So, in this case your effective address is calculated as contents of Ri plus contents of Rj. So, two registers are specified and we take the contents of these two and add them up to get the effective address. Then you can have a combination of the base with index along with an offset. So, you say base with index and offset. So, in which case you refer to it as x of Ri comma Rj. So, here we have three different values specified which are used to calculate the effective address. So, you take the contents of Ri and the contents of Rj, which is what we have specified here, and to that we also add this index x and say that effective address is calculated as contents of Ri plus contents of Rj plus x. So, these are some of the variations that we have in the indexed addressing mode. Depending on the architecture and the instruction set architecture, you could find a few more variations of this, but you will find that it will basically be some combination of these kind of addressing modes. The other addressing mode we have is a relative addressing mode. Here again this is very similar to the indexed addressing mode, but normally what happens is here the indexing is done with respect to the PC or the program counter. So, the effective address here is calculated as contents of PC plus x. Now, this PC value may or may not be specified explicitly in the instruction. If it is implicit, you may have a format like this which just specifies $x, which indicates that this is a relative addressing mode and this value x will have to be added with the PC in order to arrive at the effective address. So, these are the index based addressing modes. Then we also have these two other special cases which are called as the auto increment and auto decrement addressing modes. So, in auto increment addressing mode, what we have is again this is a combination of the indirect addressing mode along with an addition that can take place. So, here what we do is the effective address calculator is content of RI. So, the contents of RI gives you the memory address from which you need to fetch the data. So, that we do. After doing that, we also increment RI. So, actually there are two things that get done within this one single instruction. So, it is called as an auto increment addressing mode. In auto decrement, as we have seen this earlier, here we do, it is very similar to increment, but the decrement normally is done as a pre-decrement, that is you will first decrement the value of RI and then use that value of RI to calculate the effective address. Okay. So, these are two other addressing modes that we have. Now, how are these addressing modes typically used when we are translating it from higher to from a higher level language to assembly language? That is something we need to understand, and we can also look at a few examples of how these different instructions are used. These are a few examples that we have here. So, I am just explaining all the different addressing modes here with respect to a single instruction, which is the load instruction. So, suppose we are using immediate operand. So, I would have something like load R1 comma hash number. Remember that hash specifies an immediate address. So, the meaning of this would be in register transfer language, it means that the value which is there, this number which is already specified in the instruction, goes to the register R1 at the end of this instruction. So, similarly, if you have register addressing mode, it would be load R2 comma R1. So, here the value of R1 is stored into the register R2. Okay. Now, all these addressing modes that I am specifying here are with respect to this second operand. Okay. The first operand I am assuming now that all of them are only in the register addressing mode. So, the register value is what this, it is into this register that all these things are going to get stored. Okay. So, then I have a direct address. So, when we do direct address or the absolute addressing mode, so load R1 comma address, remember the address specified here is the actual memory location. So, memory location, let us say this value was 1500. So, memory location 1500 is accessed, contents are stored in R1. So, then register indirect would be specified like this, load R2 comma within brackets R1. So, now memory contents of R1, that value will be stored into R2. Now, indirect address, this is indirect addressing with respect to memory. So, here instead of R1 I am going to specify R1 comma address within brackets. So, what is happening here is we will refer to the memory location which is there in address, and the contents of that memory location are is the value that will be loaded into R1. So, M of ADR, that is you access ADR first, get the contents of that, and then the contents of that address will give you the actual value to be loaded into R1. Okay. This is the memory based indirect addressing mode. So, this is indexed addressing mode here specified as ADR bracket X. So, what we do here is the memory contents of address plus the value X, this is what is stored in the register R1. Relative address, so here I am using the implicit mode of specifying relative address, load R1 comma $ADR. So, this means that it will automatically be added to the PC. So, R1 contents will now become the value which is obtained by accessing the location PC plus ADR. Okay, this is what we will have. Now, the auto increment and auto decrement, look at what will happen here. So, we have load R2 comma R1 plus. So, here we will take the contents of memory location which is specified in R1, load it into R2, and then R1 will be incremented, R1 becomes R1 plus 1. So, both these operations take place in this same single instruction. So, similarly auto decrement, load R2 comma minus of R1. So, we first decrement R1 and then that value is taken and stored in the, that value is taken as the memory address and the data access from that memory location will be stored in R2. Okay. Now, coming to the uses of these addressing modes. So, if I have for instance, we will go through all these addressing modes one after the other. So, let us take first the immediate addressing mode. So, if as I said the example would be something like this, right, add R1 comma hash 10. So, hash 10 here is this number 10 is the immediate value that needs to be added to R1. So, suppose you had a higher level language specified like this, okay. I am just using some pseudocode kind of representation here. So, let us say you had a variable j which is equal to j plus 10, we had a statement of this nature. Assuming that j is there in location R1, has been assigned location to the register R1, then j equal to j plus 10 would have been translated to an assembly language instruction like this, add R1 comma hash 10. So, you can see that the value 10 which is specified here is explicitly coded in as an immediate operand. Okay. Next, similarly register addressing mode, add R1 comma R2. So, here let us say we had an instruction like this, j equal to j plus k. So, this statement here would get translated to this, provided j and k have already been assigned to registers R1 and R2. So, assuming that you already loaded the value of j into register R1 and loaded the value of k into register R2, assuming these two instructions have say already been carried out. Now, just a simple add R1 comma R2 would do this, would perform this operation. Okay. Coming to absolute or direct addressing mode, let us say we had j equal to j plus a, where a is in memory location 100. So, if this was known, then you could have this instruction given as add R1 comma 100. Okay. Indirect addressing mode, the register indirect, the memory indirect addressing mode, these are typically used when you have a indirection, right. So, typically used when we have pointers specified to access the locations. So, if you have j equal to j plus star a, so you've got the address of a in R2. So, then we can use this addressing mode as add R1 comma R2 specified within brackets. So, it is a indirect addressing mode. Similarly, instead of the value a being in R2, if the address of location of a is in the memory location 100, let us say. So, then we will be using the memory indirect addressing mode in this manner, add R1 comma within brackets 100. If you look at the indexed addressing modes, you will find that index addressing modes are mainly used when we are dealing with arrays. Okay. So, we need to understand how indexing modes form a very good map with respect to handling arrays. So, remember what happens in the indexed addressing mode. So, we said that the effective address of the operand is generated by adding a constant value to the contents of a register. Okay. So, effective address is calculated as x plus contents of array. So, coming to this example here, add R1 comma 10 of R2. So, now this can be used for accessing, for translating a statement of this nature. Suppose you had x equal to x plus a of 10. Now, a is an array. Assume that R2 has the element a of 0, okay, and x is in the register R1. Now, when you say a of 10, this means that I am going to access the 10th element of this array, right. So, which means I need to add 10 to the value which is already there in R2, assuming that again that all the elements in the array are placed one after the other. Let us assume a simple byte based addressing, right. So, a of 0 has the first byte, a of 1 has the second byte, a of 2 has the third byte and so on. So, if a of 0 is in R2, 10 plus a of R2 will give me a of 10, right. So, that is specified using this indexed addressing mode as add R1 comma 10 of R2. Now, what will happen here is that if x is shorter than a word, then normally sign extension is needed to do this addition, right. So, because you are adding this value 10 here. Now, this if 10 is was specified as an 8-bit word, but your register R2 is actually a 32-bit element. Now, when you add an 8-bit element to a 32-bit element, you will sign extend this 8-bit element to form a 32-bit element and then do the addition. This is based on the basics of addition that we normally have. And this index can either be a positive or a negative number. So, the sign extension has to be done appropriately. If it is a positive number, you sign extend with zeros. It is a negative number, then if the most significant bit will be a 1. So, you will do a extension with 1s. Continuing more on this indexing. So, we said that in general, the index mode will facilitate access to an operand whose location is defined relative to a reference point, okay, within a data structure in which the operand appears. So, that is what we saw in the previous example. Now, there are several variations that are possible of this mechanism. So, as we saw, we know that there are, you have based with index, offset and so on, right. So, how do we use these different addressing modes? So, suppose you have this kind of an addressing mode, right, x of ri comma rj. So, where the effective address is calculated as x plus ri plus rj. So, this could be used again for doing 2-dimensional arrays, accessing 2-dimensional arrays, where ri and rj could be used to specify the 2 dimensions that we are talking about. Suppose I had a of I comma j. So, a of I comma j, I would point to a particular location and in the array, and j would point to a corresponding location. Based on both these dimensions, we could look at calculating the effective address. So, similarly, we have the scaled addressing mode here. Here what we do is, one of these variables rj is multiplied by factor d, which acts as the scaling factor. So, based on this, you could have different ways in which the 2-dimensional arrays can be addressed. Okay. We will take a short break now and then come back and continue on this. Welcome back after the break. So, we were just looking at how indexed addressing modes and arrays go together. So, continuing on that, let us look at how the auto increment and auto decrement addressing modes also help in accessing arrays. Especially when we want to have access successive elements of an array, you can see that the post increment serves to increment the offset value to point to the next element in an array. So, for instance, we said Ri plus, right. So, if Ri was pointing, let us say, to the base of the array, so first I would have accessed the first element which is there in the array. Now, if I had used Ri plus, automatically what would happen is Ri now at the end of this instruction would be incremented. So, since it is incremented, now it will be pointing to the next element in the array. So, automatically we can see that successive elements can be accessed by just using this auto increment addressing mode. This increment that we are talking about would normally be 1 for byte sized operands, but if the operand were a 16-bit operand, then it would be 2, and if it was a 32-bit operand that we are looking at, the value that you are incrementing by will be 4. So, what happens in this case is, of course, we are assuming that our addresses are all byte based addressing. So, which is why the address of a 16-bit operand would be 2 away from the first operand that we are looking at. That is, if A of 0 was 100, A of 1 would be at 102. So, which is why we would need to add 2 for a 16-bit operand. Okay. So, this is what normally happens in the auto increment addressing mode. Similarly, we could use the auto decrement addressing mode, in which case you would start at the at one particular base, and the different elements will be accessed by subtracting from that base. Okay. Now, coming to relative addressing mode and its uses. Relative addressing modes are basically used for branches. So, we said relative addressing mode is calculating the effective address by adding the program counter, right, to the index value. So, that is it is similar to the index mode, except that you are using program counter in place of the general purpose register. Okay. So, if I have an instruction like this, if branch greater than 0, go to loop. So, this would be specified as branch greater than 0 x. What is the meaning of this? Now, assuming I have an instruction BGZ, which means branch greater than 0, I am specifying the displacement x from the PC, which will take me to this location loop, right. So, which means this loop value will actually be calculated as current location of PC, current value of PC plus x. Okay. So, this value is what would be coded in this instruction. So, since now this is a relative addressing mode, so this value x will be added to PC to arrive at the next address that we need to go to, and this value is where the next instruction would be fetched from. So, this is how relative addressing normally gets used. Since the branch target that we are looking at may be either before or after the branch instruction, right. So, the offset is normally given again as a signed number. So, this value x could be both positive or negative. If it is positive, you would be moving forward in your instruction sequence. If the value is negative, you would be moving backward in the instruction sequence, especially when you are looking at a backward branch, for instance, at the end of a for loop or something like that, then the value of x would have been negative in that case when this kind of a loop gets coded in the assembly. So, a little bit more on types of instructions. Now that we have understood these addressing modes, to complete our story on instructions, we need to look at the different types of instructions. There are different variations that we actually have. Some of these we have already looked at, but there are some which may be new. And also we need to remember that not all these instructions will be there in all instruction set architectures. There would be some combination of these instructions in different instruction set architectures, but we should know that these are typically the kind of instructions that are normally used. So, if you look at data transfer instructions, we have different variations here. We have already looked at load, store, move and so on, we are familiar with these. You could also have another instruction called an exchange instruction, which is provided on some architectures. What happens in the case of an exchange instruction is that if you have two registers R1 and R2, the contents of R1 and R2 are exchanged. So, contents of R1 will be moved to R2 and the contents of R2 will be moved to R1. You can see that providing an instruction like this can be very powerful when you are looking at swapping operands and so on, which are needed in many of our programs. For instance, for sorting and so on, you may need to swap two values. So, in that case, these kind of exchange instructions are very useful. Then of course, we have the input and output for input output operations, and push and pop, which are normally used with respect to stack. Now, coming to data manipulation instructions, there are different categories of data manipulation. Arithmetic manipulation, when we are looking at arithmetic instructions, we have increment, decrement. Now, add, subtract, multiply and divide are what we are normally very familiar with. Many instructions would have add, subtract, multiply, some of them may not have a div, but there are some architectures which also provide a div operation. There are some architectures which also provide increment and decrement, so that you can increment or decrement by a certain amount. Then you have many variations of add which are provided, which is add with carry, which means that you will do an addition with the carry value which was set by a previous add operation or a previous operation. Similarly, for subtract you have a variation which is subtract with borrow. You could also have a negate instruction which will negate the number. So, these are variations that you can have in arithmetic. Now, with respect to logical and bit manipulation instructions, so here we have a few more variations. There are instructions for instance which clear a register. Okay, so, clear instruction which will clear an entire register value, set it to all zeros. Then you have instructions for complementing a value. So, you could complement a register or a memory location. So, this will give you the complement the value, in the sense each bit will be inverted. So, similarly then of course, we have the AND or exclusive OR and so on. So, then there are instructions which do bitwise manipulations where you could manipulate on the carry bit. So, these instructions like clear carry or set carry, the name itself will tell you what it is supposed to do. Clear carry is used to clear the carry bit irrespective of the value it was earlier. Set carry is used to set the carry bit irrespective of what it was earlier. Similarly, then we have complement carry. So, in this case, if the value was 1 originally, it would now become 0, and if it was 0 now, it would become 1. So, addition to this, we also have other bit manipulation instructions called enable interrupt and disable interrupt, which are used to control whether interrupts would be handled by the system or not. We would look at more of these when we actually look at interrupts. Now, coming to other data manipulation instructions, we also have various forms of shift operations which are normally provided on many architectures. We talk about shift right and shift left, right. And when we talk of shift right and shift left operations, we normally have two variations here. We talk about a logical shift and an arithmetic shift. Now, there is a difference between these two which we need to understand. So, when we talk of a logical shift right, so basically if I have some let us say I have got, let us assume a 4 bit number, let us say I have a value like 1011. So, when I do a shift right, what will basically happen is this 1011 will get shifted right. So, what will happen is that the one which is there on the extreme end will go out. So, you will have 0101 as the value that is there in the register. So, you are just shifting it right and filling in the left with zeros. Similarly, when you do shift left, you would be shifting the whole thing left and you will be filling zeros into the rightmost position. So, shift right and shift left, these are operations we are normally familiar with. When you do an arithmetic shift right or an arithmetic shift left, what we also do is we treat the number as a signed number. So, when you do a shift right, if the number was a positive number, in which case the most significant bit would be 0, you would be filling in zeros when you are shifting it right, right. And if the most significant bit was a 1, which means it is a negative number. So, when you do a shift right, you will be filling in the left with 1s. So, the effect of this will be that you will maintain the sign of the number when it is getting shifted. So, this kind of an arithmetic shift right and left are very useful when you are doing arithmetic operations like multiplication and division by a factor of 2. Remember that when you are dealing with binary, shift left is equivalent to multiplying by 2, a shift right is equivalent to dividing by 2. Okay. So, when you do an arithmetic operation, it becomes easy because you are dealing with negative numbers or signed numbers, the arithmetic operation gives you the correct value. Similarly, we have other instructions like rotate right, rotate left and so on. So, these instructions rotate right and rotate left serve to do again bitwise manipulations. So, difference between a shift and a rotate is that when you do a shift right for instance, the rightmost bit just goes out, right, just disappears. But when you do a rotate right, that value which is there on the rightmost bit, right, so that comes back to the leftmost position. So, that is called as a rotate right operation. So, rotate left similarly is in the opposite direction. Now, then we also have other variations which are called as rotate right through carry and rotate left through carry. So, here what we do is similar to the rotate right and left, except that along with the register that we are looking at, we will also be considering the carry position. So, when you say rotate right through carry, so you would be looking at something like, suppose you have 1001 and you had a carry bit of 1. So, when you are rotating this along with the carry, treat it not just as a 4 bit number, but treat it as a 4 bit number along with the carry as a 5 bit number and do the entire rotate operation on this 5 bit number. So, that would be what we do with the rotate through carry. Now, this is useful when you are looking at manipulating with the carry. Sometimes there is a lot of information that is available which we want to handle by using the carry effectively. So, it is in these cases that you will find that such instructions rotate right through carry, rotate left through carry are useful. Again, all these instructions may not be present in every instruction set architecture, you may find variations of these. Coming to the next set of instructions is the program control instructions. So, we have instructions like branch, jump, skip, call, return, okay, and then there are instructions like compare. Okay, compare. Now, what a compare operation would typically do is it basically does a subtract instruction, but it does not store the result. So, it would do a minus b, but it would not store the result anywhere, but what it will do is it may set the flags appropriately. So, that is when a compare instruction would be used, and this is useful when you are doing some kind of a program control operation, okay, which is why we are kind of grouping it under the program control instructions. There is also a test instruction which is normally provided on many architectures, which is basically an AND operation with a mask. Now, the mask register may be implicit or explicitly specified. Assuming that you have a mask register, what this test will do essentially is do an AND operation. This AND operation is done in a bitwise AND. Okay. So, you do a bitwise AND. So, if you have this as your input register that you want to test, you want to check whether a particular bit is equal to 0 or 1. So, you AND it with a mask, and depending on the result you can identify whether that bit was a 1 or 0. So, this is used for testing bits. So, we have these test instructions. Then we also have conditional branch instructions. So, if you look at conditional branch instructions, these are instructions which test the different condition flags which are set. So, you would have something like branch of 0 BZ, branch of not 0, branch not 0. So, the condition tested here is whether this 0 flag is equal to 0 or a 1. Similarly, we have branch of carry or branch of no carry, okay, these two instructions here. So, this basically tests whether the carry flag is equal to 1 or 0. So, branch of plus or branch of minus, or this could also be given as branch greater than 0, branch less than 0. This will basically be just testing the sign bits. Similarly, branch if overflow and branch if no overflow, which is testing the overflow bit. Okay. So, these are the different branch conditions that we could be, conditional branch instructions that we look at. So, to summarize, what we have looked at in today's lecture is we have looked at the different addressing modes and tried to understand how these addressing modes get used. Now, we had already looked at addressing modes earlier, but now we have looked at it again from the perspective of understanding how it would be mapped to a higher level language. So, you take any higher level language statement, you should be able to think of what would be the addressing mode that this particular instruction would be mapped onto. We'll just take a quick look at the different addressing modes that we have been seeing so far: direct, indirect, immediate, indexed, register, base plus index, auto increment and auto decrement. In addition to this, we have also looked at some of the different variations of the different instruction types. I have given you those instruction types so that you become familiar with the mnemonics and some of these words that get used. As you keep looking at these different instruction formats, you will find that intuitively you will be able to understand what an instruction will do. So, some questions to review the contents that we have looked at today. Question number 1, identify the addressing mode and calculate the effective address in the following instructions: add R1, R2, R3, B load R1, 100 of R2, C add R1, minus of R4. Okay. Question number 2, what are the addressing modes suitable for accessing arrays? Question number 3, what will be the effect of a shift right operation on a register with value 1100? Question number 4, what does the JNZ jump not 0 instruction do? Thank you.